Are you still struggling with color on your designs? Or maybe you think you learned everything already and you're looking for some new tips. Let's start today with a very simple method that can help anybody choose a great color scheme on their designs. Firstly, decide on one base color for your design. Now you can do this by thinking about an emotion you want to evoke. Maybe calmness with blue. Maybe it's just the main color that your brand or client is using. Or it might just simply fit the industry that you're designing for. So like here, the color notorious with the vegan industry is green, and that would be the base color for the designer's color scheme on this project. Then take that one single color and check out how it fits onto the color wheel in regard to 3 different harmonies. So first we have complementary harmonies. And depending on the kind of green that you choose, you could end up with anything from orangey reds to purple, and even maybe brown. It can also depend on your tints and the shades of the actual color that you're using. The main color green could then be accented with the second color, which will be used to pick out focal points or maybe call to actions on your design. The second harmony that I think's good in this situation is analogous. And for green, that would be greens into blues and potentially purple. And then the other way, it could be greens into yellows. Analogous offers less contrast, so when it comes to applying color to a design, you need to consider how you want to emphasize certain details to the viewer. You also don't need to stick to 3 colors, you can pick a base color and then say 4 different colors that are within the same area. This scheme offers less contrast, but a kind of subtle approach. And then finally, we have split complementary, which essentially offers up 1 base color and then 2 secondary colors. So green and then purple and orange as an example. In choosing 1 base color and then opting for these harmonies, you can quickly and easily make color palettes that potentially work really well for your designs. But what about when you actually finish your design and it kind of looks a bit unorganized and it just doesn't tie together very neatly? It might be due to several different reasons, but color is often one of the causes. There is a very quick and simple thing you can do in Photoshop or other programs. This is a thumbnail design for a previous video on this channel, and I do like the concept and I do like the design. However guys, if I take a shape layer of blue and I lay it over my design and then change the blend mode and finally go ahead and adjust the opacity to something that I think works well on my design, well now I have an entire scene that does seem to gel and tie together really nicely. This won't work on every single design or every single situation of course, but it's just one of those kind of really neat tricks to keep at the back of your design mind. As a designer, you should be thinking about how to control the eye and also the mind of your viewers. No, we're not hypnotists or control freaks, but we must think about what is important on our designs and then apply a color accordingly. We can highlight this with hierarchy and contrast, or often, in the case of today's video, just simple color use. You will notice this a lot on website designs where clickable buttons or important parts of information are clearly made to stand out with color. And that just seems really obvious, right? But let's look at a few examples that demonstrate exactly what we've spoken about so far in today's video. On this first design right here for McDonald's, the designer has taken one of the brand colors, which is red, and then created an interesting background similar to what we looked at in a different video on this channel. And then they've used a complementary color to that red, which is a deep green, and they've created a color scheme for the design based around that. Complementary color schemes are always striking and contrasting, and here it's just emphasizing to the viewer the main focal points. Some people might look at this second design and assume that it's monochromatic, but they'd be wrong. This is analogous, and it's a really good example of how you can incorporate one with a gradient onto a design. And remember, analogous tends to be non-contrasting, and that's because it uses colors from the same area on the color wheel, and so it can either be really warming or cool. In this case, it's cool. It's made even more calming due to the nature of a gradient being used instead of block colors. But what about this one right here? Now this design doesn't only look really cool, but actually it's pretty sneaky with the color scheme. Now you might consider this being analogous once again. However, notice the touches of red that are used to emphasize small details. The red indicates that this is a split complementary color design using not red as the base color, but as a starting point, and the red is used to highlight other areas. But I'm sure you're going to agree this gradient effect is really cool. And so let's quickly look at how to recreate that technique because, well, why not? So in Photoshop, coming to the Layers panel and on your image, come down to the Layers adjustment menu. We first want to desaturate the image right here. My design is already pretty much in grayscale, but this is how you do it in adjustment layer. Then add another layer adjustment, but this time we want to choose gradient. Select your gradient and then dictate the angle that you want to move the gradient across your design. But importantly, make sure to move the gradient layer adjustment above the desaturation layer. Once you've finished tinkering with the gradient, come and change the blend mode of the gradient layer to something like overlay. And we can also adjust the opacity as well if you feel like the effect is just too strong. One further technique that we can use here is the dodge tool. And we use that to click and just highlight over areas of a design that you really want to emphasize that are highlighted with light. In the slider setting at the top, make sure to use a low exposure setting, and I often just use something like 2 or 3. But yeah, this is how we can recreate the effect on the design that we just saw. And now all you need to do is you need to go and find some dope typography and just add those finishing touches. The next tip is to make use of the HSB sliders when working on designs, but importantly, why? H for hue, or where on the color spectrum it is, S for saturation, also known as richness, and B for brightness. The main reason I like this slider is because if you've already established a very strong color scheme, you can just play around with the brightness and saturations but remain on the same sort of ballpark in terms of the color. But yeah, you can really change the way a design looks and feels with this HSB slider. More saturation for loudness, less saturation for calmness, and so on. This is actually really important if you want to dictate color in terms of an emotional response. And that's something we talked about in a different video, which you can find linked in the corner. Also, like I've mentioned in a previous video, sticking to a rule that actually originated from interior design, the 60-30-10 rule, that can really help make an effective color palette and end design solution. To learn more about that and some more graphic design tips, just click the video on screen. And until next time guys, design your future today. Peace.